Hello, this is Christian Paul. Today we're going to talk about drug consumption and drug production, and we're going to show you what are the countries that produces the most drugs and what are the countries that actually also consume the most drugs. And this is important not only for democracy, it's important for the whole stability of our countries. I will say at least for two reasons. The first reason is that when you have an increasing number of people that are using drugs, you have two problems related to that. The first problem is homeless people that will be increasing because when you create more dependency, what happens is that you are unable to work, in every time that that dependency actually grows, you are less and less able to work. That's the first thing. And the second thing, that because of that, many of these people that have to have these drugs to kind of feel stable or psychologically stable when they don't have more money to consume, they are open to actually do other type of activities, especially criminal activities, stealing, robbery, and so on, or even drug trafficking, because they, with that money, they can keep on going with the consumption that they have and the dependency that they have. The other problem is that in many of the states, what happens is that they want to control the population and the activity of that population, so they are going to give them the drugs so they keep consuming, and they don't have the option, or at least they don't have the temptation to enter into criminal activities. But to be able to do that, that means that some part of the fiscal money and contribution will have to be spent for buying these drugs and delivering these drugs, which means that you not only you're going to use public debt or public income, not only that, but you are probably going to be tempted also to raise some taxes, so to be able to actually get those taxes and that money for the drug consumption. So that's a very problematic point in all those issues, because of homeless people, because there are an increasing number of unemployment because they cannot actually get employed, or they don't want to work. Third, because that opens the space for them to enter into some criminal activities. Fourth, because the state actually could create more taxes to be able to control that population or the activities of that population. And in the end, on one hand, you can actually see that many people are thinking or actually proposing that why don't we just free the consumption and free the production of these drugs, so many other that money can actually be legal, and the stability and the economic stability of these countries will increase. That's not true, and you can see that especially in California. You can see that in other areas where consumption has increased, taxes have increased, and so on. And what has happened is not that the economy has been stabilized. No, the contrary, it's actually decreasing. And not only decreasing, many of the companies are leaving these states for many reasons: criminality, homeless, and all these reasons that I've been just describing. So it's obvious that that part of that solution, or supposed solution, that many people are proposing, especially from the left, and especially from the progressive side, it wouldn't work. And it wouldn't work. You can say that the money that comes from the consumption, the money that comes from the production, that could help to the stabilization of the economy. But the problem is that the people that are consuming that, in the long run, they are going to be a bigger problem than the money coming in, because they are not going to be working. They're going to probably part of some criminal activities, and they're just going to be a burden to the state, and not only a small one, but an increasing one. Okay, so let me show you, as you can see right here, Obviously, all of these are the reports from the UN. This one this comes from the Statista. Let me just show you the countries that produce the most cocaine in the countries that actually consume most cocaine. For 2023, you have to also consider that these statistics, they come not for the recent years, because the collecting of this data is difficult and it takes time, so we won't have the statistics for 2024 until probably mid 2026 and 2025 in 2027, so and so on. Okay, so if you can see here the area cultivated of coca, the country that cultivates the most coca in the world is Colombia. And this is very interesting because you have Colombia being led by a leftist president, but not only a leftist president, a president that was actually part of a guerrilla movement. This movement killed many people, kidnapped many people, and they were also into the drug production and the narco traffic linkage. So he was part of that, and not only being part of that, he actually became the president. And that's a curse that our countries have. For some reason, we don't understand that having those linkages will pursue you and will work against you every year in every part of your life if you didn't let that go. And for some reason, we always tend to lean to the left, and especially the youngsters, because of this romantic movement, they always tend to vote for the left. And that's what's happening in Colombia. And when we get the data for 2024, 2025, I'm actually expecting, because of all the reports that we have had, that the drug production in Colombia has increased, not only in 2023, but I'm sure we will find that this production increased in the next years. And that's very, I would say it was reasonable to suspect that, but also very probable to expect that because of the president, because of the ease of the police persecution against these cartels, and that's what we're seeing. So that's the second one. Peru is this. Colombia is the first one. Peru the second one, and Bolivia the third one. That's only for coca production. But if you can see here what's happening with the consumption, the area that consumes more coca is North America. Obviously the United States, obviously also Canada and Mexico, but especially the United States, 26%, and Europe, 24%. So if we think that this is a problem, a global problem, it's not only a problem of production, it's also a problem, and especially a problem of consumption. So if you want to attack the problem, you have to attack the problem in both ways. But if you legalize the consumption of these drugs, you're making the problem bigger, and not only bigger for your own country, you're making the problem bigger for especially the poor countries or the developing countries, because if there are more consumption, it's obvious that the same market will open the space for more production. Okay, so part of the problem is the States, Canada, and Europe. Now, let me continue, and I'm going to show you here the cultivation, the global cultivation. Also, this is 2023, and what has happened in this year. The cultivation has increased 6% only in 1 year. But if you can see the production, the global production of pure cocaine, it has increased 34%. So you have two problems here: the consumption, because many of the states are legalizing the consumption and they have their own problems, but they also create a problem for the countries that are producing it. And because we have not so much money in our countries in Latin America. They don't have so much money to put all the police and the military apparatus in control of this. You can see actually an increment in the production, and also with the additional fact that many of the countries we have elected some leftist presidents who actually agree with the consumption and the production of drugs. You have Petro in Colombia, you have Lula da Silva in Brazil, you had also Boric in Chile, although that presidency is changing in few months. And before that you had, and obviously, Maduro, who was taken out of the country, thank God, but that you had previous to this president, you had all the leftists with Correa in Rafael Correa in Ecuador. You had also Evo Morales in Bolivia. So that was a whole mess, not only because of the increment of the consumption, but because of the governments that were in favor of the production of drugs. So if you can see in this following set of data, that's attributed to cocaine use disorders. Brazil in total quantities, actually Brazil is the country that not only consumes the most, but it's the country that consumes the most cocaine in Latin America. And you can see that in total, the total consumption, people or the gender that consumes the most are males. In more than 60% of the deaths are actually in males. And that gives you also an idea of the problem by gender as well, because if you have this gender that are consuming the most, you are going to have the same problems, unemployment, criminality, and so on in the same gender. Let me show you here. If you can see here, you can see a development of illicit coca cultivation and cocaine production from 2025 to 2023. Okay, what are the countries that are producing most cocaine in Latin America? It's obviously Colombia, Peru, Bolivia, and we are expecting the reports for 2024 and 2025, and we're going to see Mexico here as well. And if you can see from 2014, the increment of the cultivation has been exponential. And that's not only a problem coming from Latin America, in looking at the policies that Donald Trump is applying against these ships filled with cocaine, filled with drugs, and he's detaining, and not only detaining, he's exploiting many of these ships. That's actually something that has to be done, because if you don't stop it, this is going to be a problem that's going to be out of our hands in few years, and we can become very, very quickly in lost states or parasite states. If you can see here in this graph, trends in deaths directly attributable to cocaine use in countries. Okay, so you can see that all the countries are increasing in the number of deaths attributed to cocaine use, except Italy and except Australia. In the case of Italy, because of the policies against drug consumption, and in the case of Australia, although Australia has decreased in the recent years, I'm expecting also an increment for 2024 and 2025, because also of the policies that have been established in the free use of many of these drugs. Let me show you finally, according to the presidential determination of major drug transit, this was published in 2025, actually September 2025, and let me just read to you a very, maybe the most important paragraph in this report. Okay, hereby designate Afghanistan, Bolivia, Burma, Colombia, and Venezuela as having failed demonstrably during the previous 12 months to both adhere in their obligations under international counter narcotics. In the middle of the paragraph, included with this determination are justification for the designations of Afghanistan, Bolivia, Burma, Colombia, and Venezuela as required by Section 706. And if you read the whole report, you can actually find that the countries that are producing the most drugs in the world are the same countries. Afghanistan, in the case of Latin America, Colombia, Bolivia, Ecuador as well, Mexico, Peru, Venezuela. But Afghanistan, for some reason, and I would say because of this new trend that within the American politics you can see in favor of Muslim countries and in favor of Sharia law and all of that, that you heard for many years that they have actually decreased the consumption and decreased the production of cocaine and all these drugs, because they don't accept this type of behavior. But if you can see actually in the report for 2026, or actually published in September 2025, Afghanistan is the country that produces the most cocaine in the world, and the country that produces the most drugs in general in the world. Okay, and finally, there you go, Afghanistan is the country that produces the most. Finally, I'm going to say that you have to stop the problem, and you have to stop the problem in both ways, in the production and also in the consumption. But if you go only to the production and you think that is actually you have the right to consume and consume as much as you want, you have the right to be free, but you don't have the right of taking the money of other people for your freedom to consume that money. So when you're actually using health systems and you're using the increment of taxes for the state to pay for your consumption, that's not freedom. You're actually taking the freedom from other people. And if you, not only that, but if you get into some illicit criminal activities, you're also going against the freedom of other people. So when you hear this argument that you're free because of the freedom that you have, you can consume all of that, but that actually, the repercussions of that is the decrement and the weakening of the freedom of other people. So the best way of going against this problem is attacking the production, but also limiting the consumption and making it illegal. Thank you. I'll see you next time.